Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Black Community Group and NPACN. Really excited to host this panel discussion today. We will give folks another 30 seconds or so to join. As always, I will invite you to grab water or a snack or anything you need to take care of yourselves during your time with us. Okay, that felt like a good 30 seconds. So, welcome. My name is Yana Carrillo Walker-Flom. My pronouns are she, her. I am the coordinator for the Black Community Group, and welcome to our panel discussion today, The Duality of Black and Blue. It is a conversation that we will be having in partnership with community organizations who are creating joy, spaces of curiosity in marine ecosystems on the coast of California. Before I jump into introducing our panelists, I'll give a little bit of context on who we are as one of the pathway programs of MPACN. Um, the Black Community Group is in program year 2, and we've really enjoyed creating a space that supports Black folks to come together and share ideas and resources connected to marine ecosystems. And to give some more context, I want to share the purpose that we co-created in our first year. And our purpose is really to offer a space that exists for Black folks who are passionate about the ocean and marine life to come together and share resources, support each other, and interweave our passions for food, music, film, artistic expression, and other opportunities to create joy collectively. We honor the wisdom from across our communities and celebrate our queerness, youth, disabled, rural, immigrant, and all of our intersectional identities that make us who we are. So our Black community group members are connected to marine ecosystems in a lot of different ways. We have some college students who join us. They might be studying marine biology. We have professionals who are in marine conservation work. And then we have folks who honestly just love being outside and being by the ocean, and we welcome them as well. In our second year, we really wanted to focus on creating opportunities for folks to learn virtually. So that's what we're doing today, and also participate in in-person programming. So far this program year, we've partnered with Compton Girls Club and Heal the Bay to host an environmental justice tour from Compton to Bruce's Beach, which was a once thriving Black beach that was taken by the city of Los Angeles through eminent domain in 1924. We also hosted a panel discussion back in November of last year with co-creators and participants in the California Coast in Color project that built a curriculum for Black photographers to explore the California coast. And then this panel discussion is our third engagement, and we're excited to dialogue with community organizations that are creating opportunities to foster joy and build relationships between Black communities and ocean spaces in California. So that's a little bit about who we are as a Black community group. Jamie, I'll pass it over to you to talk a bit more about MPA Collaborative Network.
Thank you, Sienna. Happy to be here. My name is Jamie Blatter, and I work for the Marine Protected Area Collaborative Network. And one of my roles is to support our 3 identity-centered community groups. But first, I'll just just give a 30-second overview. Essentially, we are an organization that is involved in getting civic engagement in marine protected area stewardship and management. And so we have 14 chapters that we call collaboratives, where we bring people together across sectors so that we can have the fishers in the room with the NGOs, with the state agencies, with the tribal partners, with the researchers. And so I'll share a link if anyone wants to join any of our chapters. And then we also have 3 community groups. So the Black community group, who is hosting this panel today, is one of them. There's also a community group for those that identify as Asian American Pacific Islander and Latine. So I'll drop a link for that as well. If any of those community spaces are of interest to you, we would love to have you. So that's it from me for now, and I'm going to pass it over to Bella.
Hi, everyone. My name's Bella Bonner. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the founder and executive director for Black Surf Santa Cruz. We are located in, you guessed it, Santa Cruz, California, and we teach free surf lessons. Our mission is to promote physical, spiritual, and communal healing through surfing, education, and recreation. And we do so by intentionally centering and celebrating our Black community and BIPOC communities here in Santa Cruz County. Santa Cruz County is a little unique in that our Black population sits around 2%. That fluctuates. So, spaces where we can center and celebrate our Black community are really valued and important. And I will pass it to Chris.
Thank you, Bella. My name is Chris Ragland. I use he, him pronouns. I founded and executive direct C League, which is kind of a piece of the after school sports models that you see with Little League and AYSO, but a lot more focused on connection rather than competition. We're based in Santa Barbara, and we make our programs as equitable as possible by significantly dropping the price and including staff that look more like the people that our community represents. I'll pass it off to Rissa.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. My name is Risa. I'm the founder and executive director of Paddle for Peace. We are based in San Diego, and our mission is to diversify the coast. So basically, that means bringing more BIPOC youth and community to the ocean to learn about ocean safety, to learn how to surf. We're also in the school districts, focusing on Title I schools, bringing in marine science education, again, ocean safety. The goal of our organization is to just reclaim space so that Black and Brown folks feel more comfortable at the beach. They have the knowledge to safely recreate at the beach, and they use the outdoors, specifically the ocean and waterways, for their physical and mental well being. And I'm honored to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Rissa, Chris, and Bella. Really appreciate you all spending your time with us and sharing more about the organizations that you founded and continue to lead. So I will get us started with our questions. And the first one is going to be for all of you. And Bella, I'll start with you. I'm curious to know what sparked the idea for your organization.
Yeah, so Black Surf Santa Cruz started in 2020. I had never been on a surfboard or put on a wetsuit, and it was actually a paddle out for George Floyd that got me interested and got me into the space. I had prior organized a couple of protests on land and put a call out on social media when I saw a flyer for a paddle out, just asking our Santa Cruz community to make space and create access for our Black and BIPOC communities who were in the most mourning in that time after the murder of George Floyd. And to my surprise, our Santa Cruz community really rallied and went to great lengths to ensure that there would be access to equipment, access to folks that could help people enter the water safely and exit safely. And so I put a call out on social media just asking our community to step up in that way. And a local surf shop reached out and was like, "We'll put all of our rentals on hold for the day if you can help facilitate a group of folks that want to have this experience but just don't have that access." And so myself and a group of like 15 to 20 of us all circled up at the Cal Surf Shop parking lot, prior to the paddle out, got our wetsuits on, very awkwardly, and just made the decision to brave the ocean together. And we arrived late to the party. We arrived late to the paddle out. We took us some time to get out to the water, but as the group of us emerged, it was just one of the most inclusive and equitable experiences I've ever had in Santa Cruz. As I mentioned before, the demographics of Santa Cruz were less than 2% Black population. And so to paddle out to this lineup of over 250 people screaming Black Lives Matter was just this first time I was like, oh, I feel like I belong here. I feel intentionally included. And this is what the lineup could look like. This is what it could be if we, reactivate those intentional spaces. And so a few months later, in September of 2020, that same text thread of us all met up to surf for the first time. And I caught my first wave. And the rest was kind of history of just like, how can we make this possible for more people?
Beautiful. What an incredible origin story. Brings up a lot of memories, I'm sure, for a lot of us during that time that also resonate now. And I'm so grateful you were able to find a space that could hold you and support the community during that time. Chris, I'll pass it to you to answer that same question around what sparked the idea for Sea League.
Yeah, a lot like Bella. It was during the time of George Floyd. I didn't even consider Sea League as something that I was going to do with my life until then, and I kind of found myself standing on a ladder with a megaphone talking about how we just need to do a better job of acknowledging one another, in general with kindness. Uh, I think being Black is tricky because it's easy to assume racial profiling, and I grew up as one of the few Black surfers anywhere I ever surfed, and it's just really easy. I would find myself kind of assuming, is it because I'm Black, or is this person just having a bad day and I'm in the way of that? So following that paddle out, I spent time with a group of Black kids who I was just, as this was COVID, there wasn't a lot of work happening. So I would just take them to do the things that I wanted to do in the water. And I realized through time that there's this huge gap in inclusively teaching kids or encouraging kids to build relationships with the ocean in any capacity. And, really you just have surfing and sailing is like the main two activities that people do. So we really try and focus on including those kids that may not love surfing so much, but they still may love tide pooling or swimming or some activity like that.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate you speaking to that piece around creating opportunities for connection, even if it's not within the frame that's sort of expected. So, like, sometimes surf camp is like, you got to be hardcore surf, or else, like, we're not going to entertain just like body surfing or like playing around in the water as something that's also maybe building up to something in the future that could be around surfing specifically. But how do we create those opportunities so that we can have positive experiences for young people that further their interest in the ocean? So thank you. Rissa, I'll pass it to you to round us out.
Thank you. So yeah, like Bella and Chris, Paddle for Peace was started during the murder of George Floyd. It was supposed to be a one-day thing though. So during, all of the chaos and everything, I was just feeling very defeated and hurt and seeing the divisiveness in community. I wanted to host a paddle out to honor the life of George Floyd and all of the other Black lives lost to police brutality. What I thought would be maybe 20 to 30 people showing up to be in community, it ended up being closer to 2,000, maybe more. And yeah, it was one of the largest paddle out in San Diego County. And I just wanted to bring people to my place of healing, which was the ocean, not realizing it was healing for a lot of others as well. As beautiful as that paddle out was, one of the things that I noticed when I looked around was that people of color were missing, people from my community. And yeah, I just was like, they're missing out on healing. They're missing out on this beautiful, gathering. They're missing out on community. And it was sad, so I started thinking about it for a while. And what was supposed to be a one-day paddle out, here we are 5 years later, six programs. We've served over 2,500 kids. We are the only Black-run surf organization in San Diego, also the only surf organization led by a woman of color, a woman at that. So there was a huge gap that just wasn't being filled. And so, yeah, just really honored to do the work and continue healing at the coast for our communities.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rissa. And thank you for touching on a theme that all three of you have touched on and leads us into our next question, which is around community. And community is something that, as I continue to support the Black community group, hence the name, but also especially within this period of time, where a lot of us are struggling to find connection, there's a lot of divisiveness. The theme of community continues to come up. And it's particularly in environmental and climate spaces where all three of you are speaking to the fact that representation for Black and other BIPOC community members is relatively low. And so I'm curious to know, none of us got to where we are on our own. And I would love to know who you all would think about or honor or appreciate when you think back to those early days of planting and nurturing, watering the seed of an idea that you had. And Bella, I'll start with you again.
Thank you for that question. We always say at Black Surf that our program, our organization always feels like a community love story, just in that, even in that origin story, it took so many hands and people to like get us into the water for the first time, creating access through free equipment, creating access through using their bodies as like safety to help people get in and out of the water. And I always say, like, this is what equity in action really looks like. This is what it feels like. And so, that first event really helped expand my capacity to dream of like what a program and organization could look like when we all come together, when there's not that division, but when folks that have more privilege or access are using their bodies to create more space and access for folks that don't historically have that space. So that always like has modeled how we've built everything. But I also just really think about when we were first getting started, I had so much doubt and so much reservation around becoming a nonprofit in the first place. As Chris and Rissa mentioned, like I did not see this coming. I never could have imagined or dreamt this myself. It did come from like the hearts and hands of so many of our community members to make this possible. But just even the story in like how we became a nonprofit, how that decision was made was solely because there was a woman, a Black woman, who just like really believed in the vision and the mission and what an organization like this could do and mean for Santa Cruz. And she just really inspired me and kind of pushed me out of the nest in that we had been looking for fiscal sponsorship, looking for, that space that we fit in here in Santa Cruz. And we just kind of kept trying to put a triangle into a square box or into a circle shape. And it wasn't fitting. And I was on the phone with her. She was on the call with me when we had gotten rejected again for another fiscal sponsorship. And she's like, you know what, kid? Like, I don't know why you don't think you can do this. I don't know why you don't think this is possible, why you don't try and just create your own nonprofit. And she just said, consider me your first board member. And that moment just really shifted everything of like seeing myself in her seeing herself in me, seeing our community and what could be possible. And it was just so many moments like that of community and connection and people believing in me, and just creating that space for us to have the space to exist in the first place.
Having worked with you over the last year and a half or so, it's so hard for me to think that you wouldn't see yourself as a strong leader or being able to lead an organization like this. And you're so wonderful at building community, and it's not surprising that other people saw that in you and really encouraged you to continue with this incredible idea that's blossomed into a strong organization. So congratulations.
Thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate you saying that.
of course. Chris, how about you?
Yeah, Bella, a lot of parallels. You got a lot of parallels. Um, Very similarly, uh, fiscal sponsorship is, I can't imagine starting a nonprofit without a fiscal sponsor. And especially me coming from the for-profit sector, it's a whole mindset shift to think, the logic is all ships rise with the rising tide, which no for-profit company industry will think like this, does think like this, because they don't. It's all competing. So my fiscal sponsorship relationship with Wilderness Youth Project, who is a land, basically a land-based version of us. They have been around for 25 years. They're, I would say, the highest you can set the bar for mentorship and nature connection, and truly caring about future generations in a way where they've all dedicated their lives to being of service. It's been transformational for me, but especially for our organization to basically shift, I don't want to say take their ethos, but learn from them and put their heart and soul into Sea League. I just can't imagine Sea League without them. And, of course, what comes with them is all of the trust that they've gained over the 25 years dovetails into us. So we basically get injected in their community in ways where we can impact lives really quickly. It's really hard to start anything. So to have that level of support was huge for us. I mean, we've had some, and then Bella and Rissa, I'm sure you can relate, but having those first big donors or those first agencies for us, that was Coastal Conservancy and the Coastal Commission. Those were huge for getting this off the ground. You know, they're like the first big grants that we get, and it kind of gets the ball rolling.
Awesome, Chris. Thank you so much for speaking to some of those foundational organizations that you also may have looked up to at some point and are now in the running with them and having their support, which I know is incredible to really support your organization and allow it to do the work that it does. So congrats to you as well. All right, Rissa, how about you?
Yeah, for me, my experience was actually different from Bella and Chris. I didn't have a fiscal sponsorship. In fact, it was a pretty lonely journey to figure out what is a nonprofit, right? I come from the medical field. I didn't know anything about starting a nonprofit. And people that I would kind of reach out to, like maybe trying to pick their brain, like, hey, let's have lunch, or, ooh, what do you do? And, where do I start? They were just like, boop, door closed, figure it out. And that's what I did. So I didn't let it discourage me. One of the special things about Paddle for Peace is we are so grassroots, we are so community led. Paddle for Peace would not exist without my volunteers and just the community, right? Starting from the parents who trust us with their children to the volunteers who were donating surfboards very early on. I have a very good friend. He's like my best friend, Jonathan, would let us use children's wetsuits when we didn't have any. One of our volunteers ended up donating 75 wetsuits, like to start us off, like brand new. Another volunteer donated some wetsuits from the surf ranch. And so the community really made Paddle for Peace what it was when we didn't have anything. And then the Coastal Commission was actually our first big grant. They gave us $50,000. And then we were able to really just buy the storage because everything was in my home garage, right? In my room. We bought a storage, we bought surfboards, and really just Paddle for Peace is community. It's made by us and it's for us. And it's really important no matter how big we grow. That is a priority for me to keep it in the community, to make sure, our volunteers know that they're appreciated because we wouldn't be where we are today without them. The community also, really helped me realize the leadership I had in me from the first day at the paddle out where I thought it would be maybe 20 people, right? And it's this huge thing. And I was kind of thrusted forward to speak in front of all these people. That's the day that my leadership was truly born. I didn't, I know I had the leadership in me, but I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anyone growing up to like tell me you're a leader, to really just instill these things in me. And so that's why it's really important in my organization to make sure that I'm speaking to these kids and I'm nurturing their leadership skills and empowering them to be the best that they can be and really keeping the community tight. So yeah, shout out to community.
Thank you, Rissa. Yeah. I saw I used to work in nonprofits as well, and I saw head nods from the two of them when you're talking about storing stuff at your house, in your basement. I've been there and know that that transition to getting a larger space or a space of your own to be able to put your equipment and really feel like you're grounding yourself and establishing your organization is huge. And a major shout out to volunteers. I know that they are the foundation for a lot of nonprofits to be able to do the work that they do. So thank you for sharing. This next question is specifically for Rissa and Chris because you all work specifically with youth. And I'm curious about your approach to creating opportunities for young people to lead in spaces where they may feel uniquely vulnerable. So, how do you support them to find their power in places of potential discomfort? And Rissa, you already started to go there, so I'll offer you to start us off.
Yeah, so, empowering the youth is one of the most important things. Like I said, there's a lot of lived experience there. For me, growing up in foster care, being on my own at 16, I just, now as an adult looking back, I realized that if I had X, Y, and Z, I could have knew X, Y, and Z earlier, or I could have been here earlier. And so I really try to model that when working with youth. One of my superpowers is that I was able to turn my pain into purpose. And so a lot of the kids that we work with are growing up in poverty like I did. They're maybe in foster care like I was. They're a person of color like I am. And so there's a lot of lived experience there to kind of help them through what they may be feeling. Also, just designing the program, right? Around like, okay, these are the kids that we're serving. We need to be flexible enough to kind of bend curriculum or maybe have that one-on-one in a group setting for kids that might be struggling, right? Another important thing to empower our youth is to make sure that there's representation. There are people that look like them, that are, maybe grew up in the hood and found a way out, or maybe, they're surfers or they're divers. It's really important for the kids to be able to see someone doing the thing that they dream about, or to see someone that looks like them so that they know what's possible, right? And then trying to just teach them a new way, right? Like they don't have to be a product of their environment. There's so much more outside of where they come from, and just allowing them the freedom to express themselves as well. To really just meet them where they're at instead of trying to change who they are, or who they want to become. You just kind of meet them there, hold space for them, be patient, listen more than you speak. Also, it really helps to just know where they come from, because there's some cultural things within that only people who come from where they come from would know. And that also, it just adds another layer of comfort for them to be who they are. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we work with our youth. We keep our kids close. All of our programs are designed for our kids to grow with us. So we have some kids that's been with us since freshman year. Now they're in college. Now they're on paid internship, and one day they will be the CEO of Paddle for Peace. That is the goal. This is the succession plan. One of the kids that went through the program will run Paddle for Peace one day, to make sure that it stays in the community, to make sure those values live on after I'm gone. And in order to like have that come to fruition, we need to start empowering them early on. In order to empower them, we need to know where they come from. Or even if you don't, that's fine. We have cultural competency training that everyone goes through. And it's really just meeting the kids where they're at, learning them. We're not a cookie cutter organization or this corporate structure. We never will be. And a big part of that is so that we could remain with our kids in community, remain responsive to the needs, change things as things also change, and just put our kids in our community first.
Thank you so much, Rissa. I really appreciate you talking about the importance of creating spaces of freedom for young people and their an ability to be flexible and responsive to their needs. I think I have two young kids, and so I get to see a lot of the structured spaces that they're in. They're exactly that. They're hyper structured, right? And maybe don't provide as much freedom for them to be young kids and to be responsive to their specific needs, allow them the space to be move their bodies and be creative and have these ideas that we can foster and explore, and opportunities for us as adults to learn from them as well. And so I really appreciate that you're be able to create those spaces for young people, and I know that they appreciate it as well. Chris, how about you? What does it look like to help young people find their power, find their voice in spaces that are new, maybe a little bit uncomfortable for them?
A lot of what Rissa said, but it's leading from the side. That's probably the biggest one, is trying not to drag kids into things that they already feel uncomfortable doing, or push them towards it, but engage them, ask questions, sit and get on their level physically, mentally, if you can spiritually, just in every way, try and connect with the kids that we're working with. We work from kids from all backgrounds, and economic, racial, whatever. And we like to encourage people to see a reflection in one another. And part of that process is just getting to know one another, and asking questions. And it's funny, I will say, with the risk taking and the fear of the ocean or anything we do, it really helps having peers around, because they kind of push each other. When you see someone that's on your team or in your group do something, you're like, "Oh, I want to do that. I can do that." So I would say a lot of our community, a lot of our structure is built around the kids encouraging each other to do, to get better and take risks. Sorry, my light just turned off.
We can
There
see
we
you.
go. I
We
just
can
got to
see
move around a
you
little bit.
just yeah. Come back, come back. No, we can see you just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So risk taking is a choice, and we try to encourage that. And it's not just us like, look what I can do, but we try and encourage them to see their potential and stretch their comfort zones.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
The nod to having their peers or other young people around them who are doing the things is another great one. And so important also to see other young people leading and recognizing that they're able to sort of step into themselves in a way that it might be hard for them to relate to adults or to have adults sort of lead that way for them, but having their peers do it really can empower young people in a really cool and interesting way. So thank you both for sharing. So I've nodded to this earlier in our discussion, but we can't ignore that the social and cultural climate, particularly for people of color, is uniquely tense right now. And in that vein, when you think about creating spaces that are safe and joyful for all of the community members that you serve, what are those things that you're considering? Bella, I'll start with you.
I would say history is really important to consider in just the moment in time that we're in now and the moments in time that our ancestors have navigated through, um, and how that will continue on into the future as well. And so I think for me, like when I think of the word duality and when I even think of Black Surf Santa Cruz, our origin story, it was rooted in such a moment of in history of pain and despair and hopelessness and doubt and fear. And what was birthed from that was a space of joy, but that's because we're not afraid to tell the truth and afraid to honor, the difficult history that is why we have the reality of why an organization like Black Surf Santa Cruz needs to exist in the first place. And so, really being able to name the disparities, being able to name the barriers and have those hard conversations, I think just creates a container for joy. It creates a container for hope, and it creates a container for people to feel safe trying something that historically they've been excluded from. Historically, their history, when you think about surfing having native roots also to West Africa, so many people don't know that. And when I think of my own experience in the ocean and what it brought to my body, that connection makes so much sense when I know it. But without that knowing, I wouldn't have even had the container to like feel like I can sprawl in the water and like feel what being held really means, not only to me, but to my ancestors and to the people that came before me and who will also come after me. And so I just see so much of it as like history, truth telling, and not being afraid to say the thing, like put it on the table so that we can move through it together, acknowledge it. Yeah, I think that just history is one thing that we really ground ourselves in. Like, we are not the first ones experiencing this. Um, and how can we use that, like, historical context to actually make change and create space presently?
Thank you, Bella. I think you're hitting on some of what, we talked about in preparing for this panel. I was talking to you and Rissa just about the fact that this is Black History Month, and so often some of the narratives around Black History Month can be so deeply rooted in our trauma, which is real and exists, and it happened and continues to happen and will continue to happen. And how do we acknowledge it without staying there? And so I appreciate you saying, in order for us to really talk and about and create spaces of joy, we also have to acknowledge some of the trauma that our communities have experienced and continue to experience. And then how do we look at that and use it as a catalyst for us to experience the other side of that, which are these spaces of joy that you all are working to create. So thank you. Chris, how about you?
Training. Training is on top of history. I was a surf instructor, I was a surf coach, I was a guide on the islands. A lot of companies, surf camps, they just hire the people that show up for the job application. And I think we can all agree that our organization is, we care about the experience that the kids are having. And if our coaches aren't trained on our ethos or water safety for that matter, you do an online first aid CPR cert, is that safe? Like, it's better than not doing it, but what are we doing to actually role play and learn about situations that can happen in the water? Not just the dangerous parts, but the conflict resolution when kids get in an argument, when kids from different ethnic backgrounds get in an argument. How do you address it? How do you include kids with special needs? And what kinds of tools do our staff need to be able to be fully inclusive and accommodate? I think that's something, training in the beginning, I kind of overlooked that. And I would say in those that first year, not that we lost people, but I realized that what I know does not exist in everybody's mind. My lived experience does not exist in my staff's mind. They're amazing. They all have potential, and we have hired them for a reason. And at the same time, we need to give them the tools to be able to provide the kind of service and experience that the kids deserve.
Thank you, Chris. Training is not a response I expected, and one that I wholly appreciate. Training to create spaces of joy, because you're so right. I think about when I was working in nonprofits in Richmond, and same sort of, we had incredible volunteers, but a lot of them were maybe disconnected from the community. They didn't live in the communities that we were serving. They didn't spend time around Black and Brown folks, right? There was just a lot of disconnect there. And maybe they didn't have some of the safety training also that was needed. And so cool, you like to go outside and hang out at the beach, or cool, you like to go outside and hike. But what does it look like for you to connect with young people? Do you understand? Are you trauma informed? Like, what are the sort of practices that are going to allow you to create these spaces of safety, to create these moments of joy for young people? And you do need training to do that. So I really appreciate that response, Chris. Thank you. Brissa, how about you?
Yeah, I really liked what Bella said about history, right? Like, I think that is the starting point for a lot of solutions, knowing the why to the what. And so for us, we really value history. We teach our kids about the history, but like you said, it's important to know the history, but not stay there. Knowing, that, Black folks come from our origins, like we're water people, like divers, surfing, called wave riding in Africa was here long before, it even came to the US. I just got off of a dive trip. The boat captain was Black, the dive instructors were Black, like everyone's just Black, right? Here in the Bahamas. Um, Being at the ocean it's a birthright for all cultures, not just Black people, right? If you look at different countries, especially the ones that are surrounded by water, you have divers, surfers, swimmers, boat captains, fishermen and women. It's not until they're brought over to the US that that disconnection happens, right? The disconnect from water is prevalent all around. You don't see Black and brown people there. And we have to ask ourselves why, especially when we come from water. So for us, we really go back in history. We tell people that regardless of what country you come from, if you are from the BIPOC community, I can show you an example of not just your ancestors, but modern day people in your country that are actively using water as a space of healing. So why aren't you doing that in the US? And there's multiple reasons why. So we address those issues, right? It's not going to be the same for everyone. And then we create spaces that remove those barriers of participation or of just feeling welcomed in these spaces, and a lot of that has to do with knowing the history, right? Especially for us, like our ancestors were brought over here by force on slave ships. But what I want our communities to know is that the ocean is the best way to connect with your ancestors. It's not the only way, but so many lives were lost at sea and the spirits still remain, whether they were thrown overboard or they jumped overboard. And anytime you catch a wave or you go to the beach, it's a head nod to your ancestors. You are doing what they could not. And so, why would you pass up the opportunity to do this? Um, and we know why. There's so many barriers, right? And so for me, it's really important to figure out what is the thing keeping you from going there and to remove it. We're all about systems change. And in order to change your system, you need to know why it exists in the first place. Once you know it, then you can start to dismantle or work towards, not having the system. So yeah, that's kind of our deal.
Thank you, Rissa. I really appreciate and I can envision the head nod to the ancestors as you catch a wave or just spend time in the water, and also recognizing that there are intentional reasons why our community has been told that we cannot and should not have these relationships with water. And so how do we start to create these opportunities that allow joy, right? Whether that's, being loud on beaches or bringing music or barbecuing, right? Like using them in spaces that we've historically been told that we're not supposed to do at the beach, or in these nature spaces. And how do we recognize that this is also a space for us and that we can utilize it in a way that supports us, and empowers us. I have one more question for the three of you, and then I'm going to open it up, for participants to ask questions. So please have questions ready. We'll sit here in silence if we have to, but we'd rather not. We want to answer some questions, so please, submit them on the Q&A. My last question, is connected to this last one around, as we embody joy, how do we alchemize these experiences of hardship or trauma or pain? And again, I'm thinking about uniquely right now, whether that's the way that our communities are being impacted, by government actions or community members, right? Not creating spaces that are safe for all of us to come together and be together. What does it look like for us to sort of alchemize that energy, um, that and that would allow us to come together? And I think for a lot of you, it might even be thinking back to when you started your organizations, right? It was in a similar moment. How did you alchemize that pain, that trauma, to move us closer to joy? I'm going to start with Rissa.
So the pain is it's a tricky thing. I think there is opportunity to turn pain into purpose. Not I think, I know because I did it. Coming from a really rough background, very traumatic, that pain is the whole reason for Paddle for Peace, right? Like finding my healing at the ocean. And it doesn't even have to be the ocean, right? There's so much trauma when it comes to water in our communities, not knowing how to swim, not feeling welcomed, X, Y, and Z, what's underneath, lack of education, right? So it doesn't have to be the ocean, but anywhere in nature, right? Like our ancestors knew that nature was medicine. Now we have modern science to show what our ancestors already knew, that spending time outdoors is good for us. It can really help facilitate that healing, not just the act of doing, but what comes from it, right? The act of surfing, you're feeling empowered, you're doing this scary thing, you're learning patience, you're getting up every time you fall. It's also the community that you meet. Some of the most healing friendships that I have came from the ocean. I've met people that are dealing with pain and trauma of their own, and together we've created a space where other people with pain and trauma can come and heal. It's the act of just being in the water, right? So for me, turning my pain into purpose is, I think it's the thing I'm most proud of. I did not plan to be where I'm at. I didn't. Paddle for Peace was never supposed to be a nonprofit. It was just one of those things where you can use your pain as a stepping stone or you could use it as a crutch. And for me to share my story and with my community and my hardships, and also share the feeling that I found at the ocean, how I used it to my benefit, and to guide others in that process, it's healing for me. Every day that I'm at the ocean with my community and my kids is a step closer to healed Rissa. When I'm not with them, these feelings come up again. But I just go to the ocean, or I go with the kids, or I go in community. And the most important thing that I've realized is that I'm not alone. And that in itself can feel healing when you're with other people who either hold space for your trauma or they've been through similar situations, and you can talk it out, you can heal together, you can cry together. find solutions together. And the ocean did all of this. It brought people to me. It brought me to people. It allowed me to use the skill sets that I've learned to now heal other people, to teach people how to use the ocean in their own healing journeys, because it's going to look different for everyone. But the biggest thing for me was that I didn't use my pain as a woe is me. And I take that same mindset into Paddle for Peace, where we have a lot of kids who are suffering, a lot of even our volunteers and community, right, that are suffering. It's important to hold space for that suffering and to help them through it, but not to enable. Like, okay, yeah, like you're Black, you're not going to be able to do this, and you can't do that because you're Black. You're Black, it's going to be hard. You're going to face X, Y, and Z. Here's how you get over that hump. Being Black is your superpower. Having this pain and trauma allows you to have a different lens to now help someone else. This is the kind of language that we use in our community and in our programs, because it's really important to empower, to feel empowered, to be empowered, and to also heal in community. I don't think healing happens alone. No, I know healing doesn't happen alone. You need community, and yeah, it's just such an honor to be able to alchemize all of the pain that I've went through, to share my story, knowing that it's helping other people, and they're going to turn around hopefully one day and do the same for others. So.
Thank you, Rissa. Thank you for your vulnerability and sharing with us and your community your own experience and how you've allowed that to sort of really be the momentum for continuing your work forward and supporting your community. Chris, I'll go to you.
Get a dog. Uh, that's the 100% guarantee. No, I would say healing is very important and something that I feel has been fundamental for my journey has been to, of course, be in those spaces where I'm healing with people that have either shared lived experiences or some similarity. But I also found that there's this thread of making friends or being in relationship with people that have similar interests and values rather than just similar problems. And I kind of got stuck in that loop, Rissa, as you're talking, like you can get stuck in that state of victimhood. But really, the power and the joy, like the good part of life, comes from being with people that are also moving upwards and progressing and really focusing on gratitude and how we can move forward rather than get stuck. And that, I think, is the single most important. I had a friend that said that to me one time, and it was like a light bulb just went off. It's just so easy to, oh well, I really like them because we kind of cut from the same cloth. That doesn't really cut it, not for the long term. So that's how I do it.
Thank you, Chris, and all of us. Cheers to the dog. I got two of them scratching at my door, so I wholeheartedly agree. Bella, you can round us out.
Thank you for that. My dog's ears must have heard you say that because she perked up. I think for me, one thing I've learned is like my capacity to experience grief and like to notice it expands my capacity to like experience and feel joy. And it always, or at least has felt for me, like a little spotlight on the thing I need to pay attention to. Not obsess over, but to acknowledge and notice. And how can I move that through me in like what medium and what way? I think today, like my answer would be honestly just showing up. If I were to give an honesty hour to everyone right now, I had a really, really hard morning and the thought of showing up just sounded so difficult. And now I'm leaving feeling so full and like full of joy and connected and in community. And I'm like, oh, I think we alchemized today. I think we did it. And I think just sometimes showing up is the key. Like when you don't feel like it, when community is feeling difficult, still show up. And I think the metaphor I'm hearing in all of what we're sharing is like we watch program participants alchemize every time they come to our programs, alchemize that feeling of like fear or doubt or questioning belonging. And then we're the woohoo crew by the end of programs. Everyone's cheering, everyone's together, and watching that like alchemize program by program and then what we've been able to see happen on a communal level. I'm like, that's the thing. That's how we like shift it from individual to community to like keep rippling outwards. And so, yeah, I love everyone's responses, and my dog loved yours too. So
Thank you, Bella. Yeah, I definitely know that is that feeling, I think, when you're especially in a moment of like, I need to just not engage. It's okay to have a moment of that, but then recognizing that it might be telling you, maybe I do need to just minimally go outside. Maybe I need to go on a walk. Maybe to call somebody. But remembering to show up to these spaces that are there, that are built to hold you. And so I'm glad that you and all three of you showed up today. It looks like the participants did their jobs. We have 5 questions in the Q&A, so shout out to y'all for sharing. One is just is a praise moment, and it says this is an amazing session. I'm located in North Carolina, and so inspired by you all. So glad I found this event. Yay! Thank you for coming. I'm in Atlanta, so shout out to the East Coasters. Um, what is your most joyful memory with the ocean? I feel like this would be a good one for all three of you to answer if you have one. And anybody, if you would like to share, please raise your hand and I'll call on you so we can have an equitable process. I said Rissa, I put myself on mute as I said it. Rissa, go ahead.
I think for me, my most joyous moment in the ocean was catching my first wave. It completely changed the trajectory of my life. It was the start of my healing. It led me to do the work that I do now. It's allowed me to change the lives of many. It's allowed me to change systems around equitable coastal access in San Diego, which is going to ripple through as we grow and expand. Um, it was the first time I was able to shut off my mind. That first wave will forever be burned in my mind and will forever be the happiest day for me.
Thanks, Rissa. Anybody else? Chris, go ahead.
I started spearfishing in 2020, and I didn't realize there was so much more going on underwater. There's just, it's literally just the surface where the waves are. You go underwater, there's this whole world. You get to interact with so many animals and kind of learn their behaviors and how they all relate. And they're fully communicating, they're fully in relationship. There are communities underwater. So I think that first that first spearfishing trip that I went on where I learned, wow, I can't believe I've been in love with the ocean and this sport and have been missing out on 99% of the what's going on. So I think, yeah, I'd say spearing, getting into spearfishing.
Very cool. Bella, how about you?
I'm gonna jump on Rissa's board and just also flag my first time surfing back in 2020. Like, just really, I was coming from tech and no known nonprofit background or experience. And it gave me enough hope to start a whole surf nonprofit organization. And I think that just speaks to the power of what water can do.
Thank you all so much. There's one more for the group, and then I'm going to try to there's a couple that are maybe one specifically for Bella and one specifically that I think would be great for Rissa. But for the group, and not everyone has to answer, but if you specifically have created any programming that is accessible for folks with physical disabilities, I would love for you to prepare to answer this one. And it says, how have your orgs approached accessibility for folks with disabilities, especially for folks with physical disabilities? I recently got a medical device implanted and can no longer submerge in water, but would like to participate in these programs, especially the educational offerings. Love the waters, and with this change, still want to be a part. How can I?
Yeah, so for us, this has been something we've been thinking about. Um, I'm really big on not doing something unless you really know about it. Um, and for us, we don't have any training working with physical disabilities. So our goal is to make sure we're partnering with organizations that do, so that we can refer. And then eventually we do want to grow and go through training of some sort to be able to offer this. because I also realize there are organizations that focus on disabled folks, but again, we have the cultural aspect that might be missing. Another thing I thought of considering, because it's like, why reinvent the wheel when things like this already exist, is maybe offering training to like cultural competency training to these organizations that work with physically disabled folks so that it's more inclusive for them. Because at this moment, we currently, again, don't have the resources or training to do it. So,
Thank you, Rissa. Anyone else?
Yeah, I can go really quickly. I would say it's for us, it's a case by case. We have some staff that have experience working with youth on the spectrum to a point. And if we feel like we're unsure, what we'll often say, we'll just have a very honest conversation with the parents and say, "We'll try this, but you have to be there and you have to work with us." And we just kind of let it evolve into something where, we do our best to train our staff and have someone on hand, but also set the precedent at it may be possible that we can't accommodate. We're going to do our very best. Because yeah, if we are being wholesomely inclusive, people with disabilities are also on that list, and we need to be thinking holistically about it. It's just I think it's like one thing at a time is how we treat it.
I just want to echo, I would say what Chris and Rissa both shared. One thing in Santa Cruz that has been a big just like push is the MOBA mats on the beach. And so at our annual Liberation paddle out, we'll make sure that we have the MOBA mats that can go on the sand where wheelchairs, it makes the sand wheelchair accessible. And our local uh, we did a lot of work for access here locally with the city of Santa Cruz and with Cal's Beach. And a part of what the Coastal Commission actually proposed is that the MOBA mats are now permanent at that beach. That is not a Black surf push, but it's something that deeply benefits our entire community. But I also see this as an area of opportunity for us as an organization. There's a lot of days where we do have organizations here in Santa Cruz that are designed and built to support people of all abilities. And there will be often days where we're all out in the water together. And it's just the most beautiful experience to watch people on the tandem surfboards catch waves. We really educate our participants on how to not only take space, but also make space for people who may have more abilities than us or less abilities than us or more privileges. And so definitely an area for opportunity, but we do have some really incredible organizations here in Santa Cruz that we share a lot of water time with currently.
Thank you, Bella. Okay, I'm gonna ask one last question, and while I do that, I'm gonna reshare the screen, which will have contact information for each of our panelists. And so there's actually quite a few questions in here we're not able to get to, unfortunately, but I'm sure that our panelists would be open to answering them if you would like to reach out directly. Let me just pop that up on the screen. Can everyone see my screen? I'm gonna go with the yes. Okay, cool. Okay, the last one I am going to ask is I'm actually going to shift to asking one more for the group. Bella, there is one in there for you directly if you want to type an answer, you're welcome to. Um, the one for the group is what's the biggest gap you each feel in allyship? And you can think about this from either other organizations, from funders, or from individuals. Bella, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I was typing something in the chat. Can you say
Oh,
that again?
yeah, absolutely. What's the biggest gap you each feel in allyship from other organizations, funders, or individuals?
Ooh, I'm gonna take what Chris said earlier. I'd say education and training is a huge gap. And then also um, the inability to release control and to
Mm,
be willing to like do things differently, see things differently, let a new world emerge kind of thing.
yeah, some like rigidity around partnerships sometimes that makes it really difficult to support Black communities in the way that is needed. Thanks, Bella. Chris or Arissa, any thoughts on gaps in allyship?
I think there is a existing gap when it comes to funding sources that a lot of smaller grassroots nonprofits are missing out on. Um, I feel like the most impactful nonprofits are the ones that start grassroots in community, the ones that are built by community. They have all of the heart, but a lot of the times they don't have the technical capabilities or capacity to write for grants or to seek funding, or to sit at the table with decision makers, and they miss out on a lot of opportunities to get their work funded. So I think that's a gap that, I'm actively working to address. It's really important for me to make sure I'm looking at the underdogs and bringing them to the table whenever I can, because there's a huge gap there.
Thanks, Risa.
Yeah, I'll just say really quickly, the bureaucracy between the city and the school districts, at least in Santa Barbara County, is absurd, and how we're limiting the opportunities that kids can experience the ocean or nature connection is deeply frustrating. And Rissa, you and I have kind of hinted at this in the past. And then yeah, the donor cultivation part, the trying to appeal to new donors. Santa Barbara has the highest amount of nonprofits per capita, I think west of the Mississippi, maybe in the country. A lot of people that have money out here, but a lot of people have the orgs that they give to. So being an emerging nonprofit, someone new with a new thing, can sometimes be difficult breaking into that pot of money.
Thank you, Chris, Bella, and Rissa, for joining us, for spending time answering our questions so thoughtfully and deeply. And as I mentioned, I have their information up on the screen, and I know wasn't able to get to all of your questions. Thank you for putting them in there. Please reach out to any of us if you want to follow up, and have more conversation, to partner and to further connect. I hope you all have an incredible Black History Month. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you
See
so
you.
much. Happy Black History Month.